move on now to NIL controversy. So a big difference from your time in college football to now is the addition of athletes being eligible for NIL deals. So I can imagine you, Nick, you got strong opinions on this because it's a pretty big deal. Things have changed, but let's go around and talk about what changes these mean for college football and other athletes.
You know, I'm still scratching my head and trying to figure it out. I mean, you know, I'm a fossil up here amongst you, and you know, I can recall back in the '80s and even in the early '90s. I mean, there were universities and athletic programs basically calling for a stipend.
Yeah.
You know, and if you were on a scholarship, an NCAA scholarship, you weren't allowed to work. So, you know, think about it. You're regardless of sport. You know, so you couldn't, you know, work at the hub. You couldn't work as a server at a restaurant. You couldn't bounce at a bar, if you will. And, you know, universities and athletic departments were calling just for a simple stipend, just so you can go on a date and go to a movie, you know, something like that, or go bowling, whatever you wanted to do. But it's not that way anymore.
Mm-hmm. You talked to me about, like, before we started talking about it, like the stuff with, you know, like Saban and like him visiting the stuff. I thought it would be a great idea for other people to hear it, especially maybe like Pat or Jenna. We were talking maybe like with Saban's outlook on the whole NIL stuff, with like how it's changing the mentality of these athletes, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Nick Saban fan.
How can you not be?
And I think, you know, just following him. I mean, I don't have social media, and I don't follow social media. So wherever he's broadcasted, and if he's on the air, I'll watch. But he made a remark about, you know, he and his wife entertaining recruits, and you know, he's old school. You know, he's teaching kids the right way. And you know, after hosting a recruiting weekend, his wife said, you know, these kids are more worried about how much money they're going to make in NIL.
Yeah, absolutely.
Than getting an education and worry about life's work. You know, so when he said that, it really, really hit me. And I still don't know how all this works. I know a lot of people, a lot of young men and women are making a lot of money over here. I don't begrudge them. I don't have you know, I don't resent any of that stuff. But clearly, in a short period of time, it has become a runaway train.
Now, I'm a fan of the NIL deals, but the transfer market is something completely different, but it's also something that's come around in the past few years, and that's completely changed the game, especially from what it was like years ago when you couldn't transfer. You had to take years off if you wanted to change schools. What do you think of the transfer market, and how do you think that's changed the game?
I mean, I guess for me, like, the first thing that I think about, and you know, I guess you're allowed to do it, so be it. I don't know how the universities feel about it, but you know, again, just, you know, if you're at one institution, you transfer to another institution, and then maybe you transfer to another institution. How do your grades follow you to the second university, to the third university? That's a mystery to me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, universities have requirements.
Yeah.
You know, how does degree or working on a degree at this place, how do they transfer to here? How do they transfer to there? How are you still have eligibility if they don't even transfer? I think the other thing, and I don't think people are looking at this, you know, with the transfer portal, this has got to be hard on high school athletes, because so many coaches sign their athletes. They have to keep some spots open for the portal. So ultimately, high school seniors are getting impacted. You know, and you know, that's kind of crummy if you think about it.
Yeah, you are seeing.
I would think so.
You are
Yeah,
seeing a lot of freshmen and like sophomore players transferring from smaller schools to the bigger schools now,
Right.
Yeah.
because of that transfer market and because of what you were just saying.
It's almost kind of the same of like how like actual jobs work in a way, which kind of goes to what we were saying with like NIL, how it's like almost like a business venture at this point. Like you know, you start off, especially for like journalists like us, you start off at like maybe a smaller place, and then as you grow, you get into that bigger stuff. It's kind of the exact same thing. It's almost a congruent path, which I don't know if that's right. Like, I personally don't agree with that. I think like if you're like a star in high school, you should absolutely be going to the top universities. And obviously like the best of the best are, but it's for those like second tier players that would be getting those chances are getting blocked out like the transfer by the transfer portal, like you said.
Yeah.
So that's I would have never even thought of that. That's a great point.
That's very true.
I mean, and I think the other thing too, I mean, if you look at it realistically, a scholarship is a contractual obligation. Okay, between an institution, an athletic program, and an athlete. Okay, people honor contracts. Okay, the transfer portal allows them to tear a contract up. I think that's kind of sour.
Yeah.
I agree.
Also, what's interesting is you see college athletes now staying an extra year or foregoing the draft and staying because they're making tons of money, potentially more money than they'll make in the league. So I think that that's also interesting too, to see how much money some of these insane players. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. making tons and tons of money.
I think Archie Manning was making it was like $6 million this year,
Yeah.
just off NIL deals.
That's more than Brock Purdy's making right now.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's the
Yeah.
first thing that came to mind. You
Yeah.
had a Super Bowl quarterback. I don't know what I don't pay that attention to his contract, but clearly college athletes are making more money than
$800K,
him.
something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
170.
Yeah.
I think it was somewhere
Yeah, something
around
like
there.
that. Yeah,
for
I thought it was
his
860.
contract.
It's
Or
kind of
something like that,
amazing.
yeah.
An amateur's making more
Yeah.
than a pro.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
look
So-
at like how much Bronny is probably making. You know what I mean?
think Bronny's
Obviously,
up there
like
and-
I mean, he's up there in like the top like 3,
Yeah.
like all-time college. I think it's
Archie.
Archie.
Shadur.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot about him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe.
Yeah.
It's all sons of famous
Yeah,
families.
exactly.
But
Right.
yeah.
I mean, it is wild. Like, it's totally changing the game. And I don't, like, obviously, I totally get, like, the mentality and what Saban is saying. But at the same time, imagine if you are, like, I don't know about you. I'm not the biggest Shadur fan, as in, like, skill-wise. Like, I don't think he's going to be, like,
I'm not either.
a first-round pick. Like, maybe he can improve to it, but I don't think he is
Right.
right now. It's kind of smart. Like, I would absolutely be eating up these NIL deals if you
I
know
would
that
too,
maybe
yeah.
your future isn't as locked in as Marvin Harrison's would be, or like Drake Mays would be, or someone like that. I would absolutely try to stay in the NIL as much as I could, because that's where the money is. You know what I mean? So I don't blame it. Like, I get how coaches and analysts are looking at it, but then also how the players are looking at it. Because in the end, you got to look out for yourself and where you're making money. Like, absolutely. So I think it'll only get more interesting as it keeps happening, because it's pretty new. Was it like
Yeah,
2 or
it
3
is
years
fairly-
maybe, or
fairly
is this
new.
4 now?
Well, transfer market I think is around 5. So
Yeah.
I think NIL is 3 now.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see once it really gets going, like once it really gets booming, and then how it affects how the game is played.
College football's only getting
And-
bigger at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Like last year we
Exactly.
saw the highest viewership for a game ever
Yeah.
between Notre Dame and Ohio State.
Yeah.
So the viewership is only going to keep going up, especially with these NIL deals. So we'll see.
Yeah.
See how big the contracts get.
Yeah.